If Skino doesn't upload that No Mercy Buried Alive match, I am canceling Behind the Universe. This isn't a joke. So if you guys want Behind the Universe to continue into 2018, you need to go over to Skino's channel or his Twitter account and send him the hashtag #BringBackSkino. Though it's sometimes easy to forget, I've been making Universe Mode videos for the better part of 4 years. In that time span, a new generation of consoles has been released, CM Punk has left the WWE to fight in the UFC, and I've gone through 4 years of high school plus a semester of college.
Yet we still haven't even reached the second WrestleMania.
My point is that a lot can happen in 4 years, both on screen and behind the scenes. There are many Universe moments that I enjoy recommending to people, and many others that I regret making in the first place. But is that everything that has happened? I might have greenlit just about anything in the early days of this channel without a second thought, but surely that isn't the case now, is it? Are there any plans that I could have gone with but ultimately decided to scrap? Clearly there are. The title of the video is a dead giveaway. And so, my lovely viewers, today on Behind the Universe, we'll be breaking down 4 plans that I initially had that I eventually overruled. Or, for the sake of simplicity, 4 things that could have happened. In my last minute title changes video,
which you should totally check out if you haven't already seen it,
I mentioned how Curtis Axel had initially won the United States Championship during a simulation, but that wasn't really a plan so much as it was an unexpected hiccup during a recording session. However, there is one fairly recent example of a title change that I had booked for a few weeks until I decided against it. There isn't any one particular instance that I want to focus on here, because I had several potential thoughts on the subject before I eventually settled on a single idea. What I can do, however, is focus on the championship that had been hot potatoing behind the scenes, and that's the tag team titles. Balor and Itami. You guys are just flying by the seat of your pants, aren't you? These belts have been a hot topic in my head for the past several months, first with the Ascension back at Battleground, and now with Balor and Itami. Initially, I had planned for the Lucha Dragons to pick them up at Survivor Series. Following that, the Dragons were going to lose them to New Day at Fastlane, and New Day was going to keep the belts until WrestleMania. When I moved away from the Lucha Dragons, I thought again of giving the belts to New Day at Fastlane. That plan didn't work out either. I thought of making the Ascension 2-time champs, and I even thought of giving Blake and Murphy a run with the gold, but in the end, Balor and Itami are still the champs as we hit the home stretch towards WrestleMania. I can't go into too much detail as I don't want to spoil future events in the series, but one of the reasons why some of these plans fell through is that I've never been a fan of tossing a title around like a hot potato. NXT recently did that with Samoa Joe and Shinsuke Nakamura, and that's a major reason why I've soured on their rivalry. Transitional champions aren't inherently bad, but if someone is going to win a prestigious accolade, there needs to be a reason behind it. You don't just pull some random high school student off the street and give them a Nobel Prize. That title has to be earned, or in the case of a fictional narrative, that victory has to serve some sort of a purpose to the overall story. One of WWE's most impactful title changes came about when Mick Foley defeated The Rock on Monday Night Raw back in 1999. Was he a transitional champion at the time? Hell yes he was. I'd challenge you to find 10 title reigns in the Attitude Era that didn't involve a hot potatoing of the belt. What made this one work, however, was the fact that there was a story behind it. Mankind had been Vince's puppet for months, but eventually the corporation turned their back on him in exchange for the younger, more talented Dwayne Johnson. Long story short, this moment served as a payoff to all of the hardship that Mick Foley had to endure to get there. He may have dropped it back to The Rock almost immediately after winning it, but the moment itself was earned. When you have Charlotte and Sasha Banks exchanging wins over the Women's Championship for no apparent reason other than to pop the ratings, you're failing at basic storytelling. I'm not at all saying that the Attitude Era had amazing storylines. Trying to analyze even a single rivalry from that era is like trying to find a needle in a haystack that is filled with venomous snakes, and is also on fire, while skydiving. But in the grand scheme of things, there was a beginning and an end point. And even if that end point wasn't necessarily set in stone, there was enough passion throughout the progression of a feud to leave them heralded as some of the greatest rivalries of all time. Would a 1-month title reign from the Lucha Dragons have accomplished that? Not by a long shot. That tells me that they don't deserve to be champions at that point, and I plan accordingly. Think about this for a second. Balor and Itami were the team that defeated the Ascension, a team that had held the gold for 5 months. And who did the Ascension win the titles from? The Wyatt family, who had held the belts for 7 months. Having Balor and Itami lose the gold in such a quick and forgettable fashion would not only make them look weak, but it would also make the Ascension look weak for losing to them. And since one of the early selling points for the Ascension was that they overthrew the Wyatts, that would also weaken the Wyatt family's reign. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, but that tends to happen when writing is one of my main interests. This one doesn't require an extensive explanation, but it was a very recent and noteworthy event, so I feel like it's more than worth discussing. As you should be aware, Ryback was the World Heavyweight Champion for the majority of WWE 2K16, and he was a very dominant champion at that. I had been building to Ryback's title reign ever since he won the Intercontinental title from Christian at the WWE 2K14 SummerSlam. One of the only highlights to come out of that train wreck. So when I found out that one of my top guys who I'd essentially built from the ground up over the course of 3 games was cut from the WWE 2K17 roster, I was more than a little pissed. Fortunately, I was already planning to phase Ryback out of the title picture, and eventually the company, but I fully expected him to be there due to how late in the game cycle he was released from the company. You might be thinking, that shouldn't be a huge problem. After all, you still had about 2 months to come up with a new plan before 2K17 came out. Surely that's enough time. Haha, no, it's not. You see, by this point, I was preparing to move to college, so I had already recorded everything leading up to Fastlane. This meant that I was already locked into a match for that pay-per-view, a match that Ryback was scheduled to win. But MathWiz, you say, why didn't you just let Seth Rollins win the title? Because I already had bigger plans for Seth Rollins. His ongoing rivalry with Dean Ambrose did not need the title, nor do I feel like a title victory for Seth here would have benefited his character in any way. I had already made a blunder with Dean in WWE 13 that I could never recover from, and I wasn't about to do the same with Seth. The only thing that saved me was Dolph Ziggler's rematch clause as guaranteed by Kane. I had invented the idea of Ziggler returning to help Team Rollins as early as May of 2016, but I'll assume that I didn't think of giving Ziggler an ironclad rematch clause until Survivor Series was actually uploaded in mid-July. Initially, Ziggler was going to challenge Ryback on the Raw after Fastlane to a title match at Royal Rumble. This was why a 24-hour notice was implemented in the first place, to prevent Ziggler from abusing it. Then the roster reveal happened, and by sheer coincidence, that rematch clause saved my bacon. I still can't believe how lucky I was. I solved a problem before I even knew that there would be a problem. I had considered upholding the 24-hour notice by having Ziggler announce at Fastlane that he would be challenging Ryback on the following Raw, which Ziggler did do, but for the sake of gameplay consistency, I retconned that into a fake-out to subvert people's expectations away from the possibility of Ziggler cashing in later that night. All I had to do was place the blame on Kane for abusing his power yet again, and just like that I was safe. Ryback was going to drop the belt to Ziggler regardless of the situation. All I did was rush the process of getting there. If Ryback had been in 2K17, I would have had him put over some newer talent on the way out. Maybe throw in a heel turn and pit him against guys like Dean Ambrose, Sami Zayn, AJ Styles, Samoa Joe, and so on. Not a substantial change in the grand scheme of things, but on its own, this is easily one of the luckiest and unluckiest developments in the series to date. While we're on the topic of the World Heavyweight Championship, I'd like to travel back in time to WWE 2K14's Tables, Ladders, and Chairs pay-per-view. During that event, Mark Henry successfully defended his title in a TLC match against Christian. Does that sound surprising to you? It should, because Mark Henry was not supposed to win that match. Unlike with several Pretend It Never Happened entries, however, this match was entirely controlled by me. I suppose entirely isn't the proper word since I was only playing as one guy, but I outright refused to accept a match where Christian walked out the winner, simulation or otherwise. But wait, didn't I just say that Mark Henry wasn't supposed to win? Why am I contradicting myself? Oh no, I'm not the one responsible for the contradiction here. 2K is. You see, thanks to WWE 2K15's Showcase mode,
I'm so glad that you're gone, you piece of shit.
Edge and Christian were removed from the on-disc roster so that they could be included in the One More Match showcase. That meant that I wouldn't have access to their models until the game had already been out for a month or two. That's fine and dandy when you're playing the game for fun, but when you're trying to book a storyline for a universe mode that you post post on the internet for anyone to watch, something like that kind of kills any plans that you may have regarding a certain superstar. 2K is doing the same thing to me this year with multiple superstars. I don't fucking care about Papa Shango. I just want WWE 2K17 to be a perfect 10. I don't just want this game to get me hyped, I want to stay hyped while playing it. I want this game to be the greatest game that I ever played. Too sweet? Back in WWE 2K15, I was heading into WrestleMania season, and I had a cool match planned where Edge and Christian would go toe-to-toe for the World Heavyweight Championship on the grandest stage of them all. The problem there is that it's kind of hard to book a feud when neither of your superstars are actually around to do anything. Although WWE managed to pull it off at Survivor Series, and whoa boy, look at the money they're making from it. Originally, Christian was going to face Mark Henry in a rematch at the Royal Rumble. Maybe the triple threat would have happened in Elimination Chamber instead? This was 2 years ago, so my memory is a bit hazy on the subject. I still sort of made the match in the end, but it wasn't going to be as good as I had envisioned. Then again, this is the same WrestleMania that featured CM Punk versus The Rock as the main event, so take that statement with a grain of salt. I love tournaments. They're such an effective tool that you can use at almost any point in a story. Not only can a tournament be used to create new storylines, which is often why new universe modes begin with a tournament, but a tournament can also be used as the climax of several pre-existing rivalries. You can integrate a mix of both, or you could construct a completely self-contained narrative within the tournament itself. There is an endless amount of possibilities with a tournament, which is why choosing a winner can be incredibly difficult. Besides the winner going on to win the World Heavyweight Championship, nothing noteworthy came out of my tournament from WWE 2K14, which is why I really wanted to step up my game in WWE 2K16. Believe it or not, Titus O'Neil was actually the fourth man that I had considered to be the King of the Ring. I had been tossing the tournament around in my mind as early as Payback, and since there was such a long time frame between that event and King of the Ring, I had plenty of time to book potential plans for each winner. My initial pick to win it all was Seth Rollins, but as I advanced through his feuds with Triple H and Dean Ambrose, I decided against giving Seth the win. My second pick was Roman Reigns, and unlike Seth Rollins, I actually remember planning out Reigns' future as the King of the Ring winner. Originally, the main event of Survivor Series was going to be Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar, but I decided that it was a bit too early for me to put the title on Reigns. After I abandoned that plan, we might have been approaching SummerSlam at this point. I began planning for the King of Swing to become King of the Ring. Cesaro was riding a huge wave of momentum at the time, and as his title versus title match against Titus O'Neil began to take shape, I thought, well, why don't I just shove another rocket up this man's ass and send him to Mars? Just so we're keeping track here, this means that Cesaro would have held the US title, the Intercontinental title, and the title of King of the Ring all at the same time. As I approached the event and Kevin Owens came into the picture, however, I decided to take the Intercontinental title off of Cesaro in preparation for his move to the main event. But that decision turned out to be the catalyst in my decision to change plans once again. Before all of this, my idea was for Cesaro to win the tournament and challenge Brock Lesnar for the WWE title at Survivor Series. That was part of the reason why I was careful to emphasize the notion that this year's King of the Ring would be free to challenge for either world championship instead of simply the champion on their own brand. After I took the IC title off of Cesaro, however, I instead used that opportunity to bring Cesaro back down to earth, and I had two reasons for doing this. One, because I felt as though giving Cesaro such a massive push immediately following his 6-month-plus reign as the US champ might sour some people on the Swiss Superman. And two, because I felt as though this King of the Ring should be used to elevate someone who otherwise might not make it into the main event scene. I already knew that Cesaro was going to be a major contender in the main event. He didn't need the King of the Ring to get there. The same could be said for Rollins and Reigns, even if their payoffs weren't going to be as immediate. So who else could have believably won the tournament who hadn't already been in the main event picture? Dean Ambrose, but that would have gotten him away from his rivalry with Rollins. Rusev, maybe, but I didn't feel like he was ready for the big time yet. Neville, same problem. Stardust, same problem. There really was only one man who fit the bill, and that was Titus. At first, I was planning to have Titus eliminated in the quarterfinals by Mark Henry, all in an effort to make Roman look strong by knocking off the former King of the Ring winner. From there, Roman would have fought Seth Rollins or Cesaro in the finals. The more that I thought about it though, that just didn't feel right. Titus had been tearing it up as the Intercontinental Champion for 6 months, but a loss here would have cemented his stay in that division. This is a guy who, much like Ryback, I had built from the ground up. But unlike Ryback, WWE had never put Titus O'Neil in the main event. Hell, he hadn't even come close. This was my first real chance to put a secondary character into the leading role. And that's what I did. I even worked the Primetime Players feud into the tournament just to raise the stakes on the Mark Henry match. This tournament could have been a complete bust for Titus, but instead, it served as his launching pad into the WWE title picture and as the perfect opportunity to progress the Primetime Players story. I will admit that I never planned to actually give Titus the WWE title, but that's because the end goal with him was always to reunite with Darren Young. While I did enjoy Titus's time as a single star, I always felt like he and Darren worked better as a unit. And once Kevin Owens came into the series, he was going straight for that WWE title regardless of who the champion was. Even if Titus did not win, the fact remains that he was in the main event of Survivor Series fighting for the WWE Championship, which itself is a tremendous accomplishment. Sometimes you have to be humble and take the victories that you can get. And Titus has gotten a ton of victories over the past year in Universe Mode. Considering that Titus was hardly a factor in my original plans for the tournament, I'm proud of the final decisions that I made. Now I just need to do even better next year. Thanks for watching. I apologize if this episode was less consistent than other Behind the Universe series, but I'm still working out the formula for this subsection of the show. I get a lot of questions asking me how I book my Universe Mode, and since it's incredibly difficult for me to answer a question like that, I hope to use this concept to delve a bit deeper into why I scrapped the plans that I did. It isn't really a concrete answer on how to book a show, but I don't think that such an answer exists. This should at least highlight part of my writing process, but at the same time, giving away too much information might make the future of my actual Universe Mode too predictable. So, it's rough. Moving forward, this and Pretend It Never Happened will probably serve as the foundation of Behind the Universe, and I'll throw in the additional odd entry here and there, whenever I have a new idea. As always, if you have any suggestions for future topics or ideas on how I can improve the series, be sure to let me know down in the comments below. If you're interested in learning more about me, you can follow me on Twitter at MathWas97X if you have not already done so. I'm hoping that 2017 can be a big year for the channel, and I need your support to make that happen. Thank you for joining me once again, and until next time, keep on YouTubing.